So, this week's topic is one that is very near and dear to my heart. I think it's extremely important as a musician, and it was inspired by a conversation that I had with a very dear friend of mine who I consider to be a supremely talented and generous musician. And the topic is self esteem, especially self esteem as an artist. Honestly, this is an issue that every artist that I've ever met, spoken to, worked with in any capacity has struggled with in one way or another, myself included. Now, this is a really complex topic and it changes from individual to individual all the time. But in an attempt to distill it down into words, I think the essence of the problem is this. In order to come to the point of being an artist or a musician for a living, you need to care so deeply about what you're putting out. The quality of it, how it's received and perceived by the audience that you're fortunate enough to play in front of, has the ability to give you the kind of gratification that you've learned to expect from being an artist for a living. But it also has the ability to take all of that away. You essentially sign a contract with yourself and your chosen art form that link the pair of you for life. As long as you get up in the morning and choose to do what you've chosen to do with your life, you're bound to that product. So how do we go about continuing to feel good about what we do while keeping the most sacred parts of our self-esteem, well, sacred? I wish I had a single answer that could fix this once and for all, because it's something that I struggle with on a daily basis. Interestingly enough, it's something that the pandemic has really brought to light for me, given how up in the air live performance opportunities are these days. But during this time, I've been able to sit and think very deeply into this issue for myself. And I've also been fortunate enough to have amazing conversations with amazing artists that I am fortunate enough to call my friends. And I've developed some points that I'd like to share. I'm reticent to call them answers because, as I said, there isn't one single answer that can fix any of this. But these are the things that I like to remind myself of during the moments where I feel less than capable or less than what I would like to be. Point one is that although this is not a very pleasant feeling, and obviously it's something that we need to deal with if we're to move forwards with our lives, it actually represents something really good in that you care very deeply about what you're putting out into the world, and also that this is a normal part of the process. Point two is to examine why exactly you care so deeply about the work. I've fallen into the trap of wanting the work to be good purely because it makes me look or feel good so many times. And it's incredibly easy just to start doing something for those reasons. So in these moments, I really have to make sure that I'm focused on wanting the music to be good for the sake of the listener or the audience, and not with the inflation of my own ego in mind. This will almost always creep back into what we're trying to do, or at least it certainly does for me. And in those situations, I have to force myself to completely reimagine the purpose of what I'm doing, which is obviously easier said than done. Point three is to practice detaching my idea of success or my future success from my own personal self-worth. That's not to say that you shouldn't feel proud of your accomplishments, but personally, I think it's really important to acknowledge that just because you achieve wonderful things in your career doesn't make your life any more or less valuable than the person sitting in the room sharing that experience with you. Human life has an intrinsic value that isn't affected by what talent its bearer is perceived to show or not show in this life. Reminding myself of that brings things back into perspective for me when I'm feeling low about my numerous personal shortcomings. Point four was really brought to the forefront of my mind when I was having this phone conversation with my friend. And it was halfway through the point of trying to explain to him that everybody on this planet has an intrinsic value except my work and what I do and what I point out. That's not as good. And I had to stop myself and really give myself a good shake. So point four is acknowledging that this is always going to be a part of the dichotomy of being a creative individual and practicing an art form for a living. So practice being kind to yourself and talking to yourself the way that you would talk to others. Do you love your friends and family any less when they experience their own personal shortcomings? And if you answered yes to that question, we need to have a whole other discussion. So that's all I've got to say on this topic for this particular video. Please let me know if you have anything else that you think I should have mentioned on this topic. Like I said, it's extremely individual and it's extremely complex, but I'd be really interested to hear what your thoughts are regarding how you feel about being a musician and being one for a living. Also, if you're enjoying the videos on this channel, we would really appreciate your support in subscribing. There's lots more where this came from, and we're really excited to share it with you. So I hope to see you in the next one.